I did a 3-year long commercial graduate scheme, which I've successfully completed. But whilst I was on that scheme, I made a ton of mistakes, silly mistakes. I'm going to share them today so you don't have to make the same ones I did. Today, I'm going to share the advice from the book, The First 90 Days, which is applicable for managers and leaders joining into a new business and into a new role. But I'm going to put a graduate and student lens to make the advice a little bit more applicable to someone like yourself who's starting an entry-level role, say a graduate scheme, a graduate job, an internship, or just an entry-level role into business. So, get comfy, grab yourself a drink, story time is about to begin. Let's get into it. The first tip is to mentally promote yourself. So when you get a promotion into a new role, you need to elevate your thinking to that next level. But for you, this is you're no longer a student, you're no longer in academia. Your success within school or university took you to this point. But to go further beyond, to be successful within your career, it's going to take a new mindset and a new skill set. So my advice to you, 1, recognize you're not a student anymore, you're a deal-cracking professional who's going to make it in the corporate world. But 2, do the research before you start. Think about the role and industry you're applying for and going to work into. What I would focus mostly is on your people skills. Doing the work at a job is really easy. Managing and working with people is really difficult. So I would spend some time learning about negotiating, persuasion, managing people. The kind of books I would recommend or anything that help your business acumen. How to Win Friends and Influence People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The First 90 Days, and watch my videos so you understand what a graduate job, what an entry-level role will actually look like and prepare you for when you start. Tip number 2 is accelerate your learning. So there's a window when you first start where you can't possibly ask a silly question. Dedicate this first few weeks to asking as many questions as you possibly can and get up to speed as soon as possible. You might be tempted in meetings to give this air that you're already competent and you're already up to speed. So you might not ask a question even if you're confused about something. But you will find that actually people in your team who've been there a long time are confused about the very same thing you are. In the first few weeks, you want to have a series of questions that you are dedicated to answering. So questions like, what is the business turnover? What's its profit? And what's its gross margin? Who are the customers, particularly the high value customers? What's the core product range? What's the organization structure? So who's who? And what's the strategy? Where does the business want to go in the next 5 years? The reason it's important to understand the business is to understand how you fit in with it so you can align what you work on your role in terms of achieving the overall business strategy. Tip number 3 is build your team, and this is a key one. The book focuses on hiring and firing the right people and building your own team. You likely are the most junior person in that team, so that power's not with you. But what power is with you is building strong, meaningful, good working and personal relationships with your immediate team members. Hopefully this should happen pretty naturally, but my advice to you is put one-to-ones with every single person, no exceptions, in your team as soon as you possibly can. The kind of questions you should ask your teammates are, what's your role? How do we work together? What do you think the biggest challenges we as a team face and the business? If you were in my position, where would you focus? These kind of questions, 1, help build your connection with that person, but 2, allow you to understand where the big problems are and where you should focus. If you hear the same thing from a few people, that's a good indicator. That's probably where you should start. Bit of a pro tip, remember small details about people. I had a page in the back of my notebook where I wrote everyone's names and small details about them. You might think this is kind of strange. You definitely don't want someone to see this page in your book of all details about people. But if you can start a meeting by saying, hey Stacey, how's the 2 kids? Did you catch up on your favorite TV show? They will absolutely love you for it. These things might seem like small details, but to someone, they have a massive impact in terms of building that relationship with you. Next tip is to match your strategy to the situation. So depending on whether you work for a startup or a big business, the kind of work and how you're going to win in that role is going to be very different. So a startup is like a small speedboat. It's very agile, very nimble, and very quick to move. A big business is like a slow moving cruise ship, huge resource, but if it wants to make a change, it takes a long time to move and change direction. A startup wants to do 10x every year, so the kind of role you're going to do is wearing many hats, constantly adapting and working in a changing environment. a big business that wants to reduce liability, automate things, follow process. I'm going to hazard a guess because you watch my videos and I predominantly focus on graduate recruitment and graduate schemes that you work for a big business. So the strategy in your organization is going to be to sustain the success. However, comment below, who are you? Are you working for a startup business? Are you working for a large company? Comment that below. The next tip is absolutely key, and this is to negotiate success. Whilst I was on my graduate scheme, I found, opposed to being micromanaged, I actually found that I was left to my own devices a little too much, and I didn't get the guidance and the kind of mentoring, particularly in my first year role, that I was kind of expecting. The problem that this created was when I came to my mid-year review of my line manager, she told me that I was working on projects that she didn't want me to work on, which came as a massive shock and surprise to me. The problem was I didn't take responsibility for that relationship with my line manager. So that's my advice to you. Take 100% responsibility for the relationship with your line manager. Put in at least monthly catch-ups to talk about your development and your career progress. You can start these calls by saying something like, what's your expectation of someone like myself just in the first few weeks? I would like to perform the best I possibly can in this role and get the most I can out of it. What would I have to do to be a high performer? And then each month you're reviewing this with your manager. I had my mid-year review literally this week, and my boss said to me, what can I say? You're near enough perfect. Let's get you that promotion. The reason is every month, this is an easy conversation. Every month we're talking purely about how I develop, what I'm working on, what I shouldn't be working on, and how I take that next step up to that next level. Another pro tip, simply by putting in this catch up with your boss, you're giving him a statement to say, hey, I'm a high performer, I care about my career, I'm dedicated to self-improvement and development. You've done to show him that you're a high performer 80% of the work just by putting in that call. The next tip number 6, is to secure an early win, and this is a key one. When I started my sales role after the graduate scheme, the business was implementing a price increase, so increasing the prices of most of the customers, and there was a big Excel spreadsheet, but it was really difficult to quickly see how a region's performing and how an account manager is performing. So I made a dashboard using pivot tables and a few graphs and bar charts to quickly show you which customers are giving us the most gross margin by account manager, which region's performing the best. And my boss absolutely loved this, and so did my boss's boss. You'll likely be the youngest member of your team, so where you can best your teammates is not on knowledge and experience, but on your use of technology. You'll likely be the best at PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Teams. I made a movie for a conference using an iMovie template, and the business went nuts for it. So identify quickly where you can add value. It's likely going to be your experience and knowledge of technology. The next pro tip is to find the office VIP. Every office will have this. Someone who's been there a long time. They're typically a PA to one of the directors. Everyone knows them. Everyone likes them. They're the gatekeeper to one of the directors. They have a really good knowledge of the local area and who's who, and share points and getting access to things. They won't necessarily be the best on business strategy, but they're very well connected within the business. If you can make a friend out of the office VIP, you've got a really strong ally within the business and the office. Tip number 7 is to create coalitions. So hopefully building relationships with your teammates and your line manager is going to become pretty natural and pretty easy. What's going to take a little bit more active focus is building relationships outside of your department. A lot of your teammates are actually going to stick to their silo and not be interested in learning about things that are beyond their comfort zone within the business. If you can venture out of that, build connections and reach out to people in other departments, you can quickly become one of the most connected people within your team. You do this by putting one-to-ones in with people in departments who you meet along the way, ask them about their role, ask how you can work together, ask how you can help achieve their objectives, for mutual gain. If you can do this, particularly with the departments who could naturally become an enemy. In sales, this is supply chain. In sales, we overpromise. Supply chain have to deliver on their overpromises. And typically we butt heads. The next tip is to keep your balance. So when I was 25, I was ready to retire. I felt so burnt out because I'd neglected absolutely everything that wasn't my graduate scheme and my career. And I had to make a change and realize that my career is not a sprint, it's actually a marathon. And that's why I got a job in sales. This is work I'm so much more energized about. That's why I became home-based. This is an environment I work so much better in. It's why I started this YouTube channel. I wanted to dedicate my time to something that wasn't just my career. And the funny thing is I have never now earned more than I have in the last few years. I've never had better performance reviews, and it made me recognize that I was actually just working hard, but not smart. The reason I tell that story is just to ensure that you're spending time to review your performance and spending some time on you and your skill set. You know, really understand, is what I'm doing today going to take me to where I want to go tomorrow? The final tip is your job is to get your next job. This is not in the first 90 days, this is not in the book, but I just think it's really important to keep in mind. Yes, you've got to do well whilst you're in the role. Yes, you've got to build connections, but that's all in service of furthering your career. You're not here because you have some innate desire to help the company. If everyone stopped getting paid, they wouldn't show up the next day. The point is just to keep in mind that your career is the primary focus of why you're doing well in that role. That will involve doing great, outstanding work and getting great performance reviews. I'm just saying you're not doing it just for the sake of working. You're doing it to make yourself more money, get yourself a promotion, and take you where ultimately you want to be. Just keep that in mind. Ask yourself every single day, is what I'm doing today taking me where I want to go tomorrow? Thank you for watching. If you'd like a copy of the first 90 days, there will be an affiliate link in the description. There's also an affiliate link for the graduate resources that I used that helped me get my top choice offer, so please check that out. If you would like more wisdoms, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Boom. Good.